God, we love you and we thank you for this day. And thank you for your goodness to us, God. We stand in all of what you want to do in our lives. When we surrender them to you, God, and we thank you for this moment that we have together. And I pray that you carry us through these next few moments the same, Lord. In your name I pray. Amen. You can be seated, kids. You can be dismissed. If you'll just go out the back here, there'll be some people out in the lobby there to lead you to where you need to be.
Goodness. Hi, buddy.
Sorry, guys. Sorry. All right. I know you like it when they're gone, and I kind of like it. And I kind of don't, because it takes half the people with you, but it's good. And they go down, and they're taught well. Our children's minister, Hillary, again, is doing an excellent job, her and Wes, and their new roles there. Just excited for what they've been doing so far. We're talking about nice guys finish last, but before I get into that, what I realize is that when you're hungry, you'll eat. When you're hungry, you'll eat. Actually, when you're hungry, you'll do more. I really hate to use the term eat, you'll consume. Have you ever seen somebody who's really, really, really hungry? I mean, like hasn't ate in days, and then they see food and they get to eat, and they just, and they're just shelling it as fast as they can get. Sometimes, you know, when somebody isn't used to eating a lot and they get to sit down at a big meal, what do? Boom, 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 just as fast as they can put it in, and then all of a sudden they eat so much that they're sick. Yes, but what I'm saying is when you're hungry for the Lord, you'll eat. And when you're really hungry for the Lord, you'll consume. And you know what? And you'll be eating at night. You'll be eating in the morning. You'll be eating at times, all the time, because you're just so hungry. You can't be full because you just keep consuming. And what I found is people who really aren't hungry, they do this thing where they snack all the time. I'll just eat. It's okay. I'll have a little of this, maybe a little of that. And they're not really serious because they're not really hungry. And you know what? I relate that to a lot of lukewarm people. And they just kind of walk, I get a little bit of this, a little bit of that. It's not super important because I'm not super hungry. And that's what I've realized with a lot of people is that they're not hungry for the Lord, so they don't consume it. So they never feel like what? They never feel like they're full of Him. They never feel like they've indulged on Him. They don't know what it's like to really experience the fullness of God because they're always experiencing little pieces of Him. And I would say this, why don't we, instead of just walking through the motions, why don't we get hungry again? Why don't we come like, man, there's like an expectation, like, oh man, we're fixing to have a meal. I can't give you your food for the week. In one little message, I can't give you enough to survive all the week. You're going to hit things in the morning that are going to be heavier than I can hit today. So what do I say? I say you're going to have to get a little bit each day, and you're going to have to feed yourself because adults do what? They feed themselves. And you're saying, oh, Pastor, the only message I get during the week is from you. No, you can't live like that. This ain't even my message today, but what I would say, just consume every day some of His Word and get a hunger for Him. Today what we're talking about is nice guys finish last. You probably heard that quote before. Nice guys finish last. We got to look at that as a bad thing. But I want to show you a different side of that today. In the Bible, Jesus talks about the first shall be last. And Jesus gives this parable about a man hiring people to work in a field. And he said he paid some of them this wage, and they agreed on it. Said, Brett, come to work for me in the morning. And I said, I'm going to pay you this much. And he started working for him. Well, he works all day, and at the end of the day, Kedra comes to me, and I pay him the exact same amount that I pay Brett, even though Kedra only worked for an hour for me, and Brett worked for me 10 hours. And they kind of complained about this. And what he's comparing it to is there's going to be people just like the thief on the cross who at the last minute they called on Jesus and they got saved. They got the same amount of heaven as somebody who lived their entire life for him. And these people, it's like the people are complaining, but it's like, didn't you agree upon this wage? When Brett started work, didn't he agree? Didn't he say, that's fair for me. I'll work for you 10 hours today, and that's good money. But then he didn't get mad until Kedra accepted the money, And he only had to work for an hour for the same thing that Brett had worked 10 hours for. And so the whole thing is like, there's going to be these people that at the last minute, they say, oh, Lord, help me. And you know what he's going to do? He's going to help them. Because that's who he is. And he compares it to heaven. He says, how some will get to heaven and have only lived for Jesus a short time compared to those who have given their entire lives to him. And it starts out with this verse right here, Matthew 20:16. And it says, so the last will be first and the first will be last. And on earth we have this tendency of thinking that whatever we do, wherever we go, we want to finish what? First. What's the Talladega Nights, Ricky Bobby, if you're not first, you're last. You know, that's the whole mentality of people. I've never seen that whole movie, but I have seen that quote. It says sometimes we don't even care who we step on during the process as long as what? We're first. I literally have been on the steps going into my house, and there's just a few in my garage. Elijah, Hosanna, the dog, and the cat all trying to push to the door. I'm like, y'all don't even have a key. And everybody's fighting for the door. I'm like, how about you let the guy with the key go first? And I'm like, we always kid at life, we say, oh, you know what? You can go first because you know what? In heaven, the last are going to be first. So I'll just eat them and it'll be okay. And we make that joke every time about, especially about Rachel, because sometimes you're at the front line every time. But we love to fight for first. And Jesus is showing us there's coming a time when those who are lost will be first, and those who have fought to be first will come in last. It's the paradox of the upside down kingdom. And what I mean by that, it means in order to become more, I must become less. And in order to be strong, I must weaken myself. And Jesus sets the example of this, and he serves when he should be served himself, and he's humble when he could have been what? Prideful. And he's 100% man, but he's also 100% God. See what I'm saying about that? It's this choosing of lowering yourself so that others can be higher than you. And it's funny that that's the example that Jesus sets, but in church oftentimes what do we do? I don't mean anything by this bad, but we build these platforms and we put ourselves above the people. And really the reality is that Jesus was below the people. And I'm not saying that everybody on the platform is bad or that being on the platform is bad. I'm just using that as an example. Look here, Philippians chapter 2. It says this. It says, in your relations with one another, have the same mind as Christ Jesus, who, being in very nature God, did not consider equality with God something to be used to his own advantage. The very Son of God, who is equal to God, did not use this as an advantage for himself. Rather, he made himself nothing. What am I fighting for? Why am I striving to be better than everybody? It says that Jesus wasn't doing that. And it says by taking on the very nature of a servant and being made in human likeness and being found in appearance as a man, he humbled himself, becoming obedient to death, even death on the cross. And I look at that verse and I'm just astounded by it. Is that Jesus, he had equality with God, but he didn't use it to his own advantage. And Jesus had all this authority over death, yet he submitted to it. And by doing so, it saved us all. And where we would be if he had chosen not to shed his blood. Just think, if he hadn't chosen to shed his blood, if he had not chosen to overcome sin, where we would be. But yet Jesus sets the example of serving by doing what? By becoming lower than those that served him in order to influence them and impact their future. If you want to impact somebody's future, serve them. Don't lord over them. Serve them. Give all that you have for them. And you know what? You'll be more influential, more impactful than anyone. Jesus washed his disciples' feet when they should have been attending him. It's the end of his life, and he's about to go to the cross. And his last outpouring comes to his disciples by what? Him washing their feet. Look here. It said, John chapter 13. It says, Jesus knew that the Father had put all things under his power, and that he had come from God and was returning to God. So he got up from the meal, he took off his outer clothes, and he wrapped a towel around his waist. After that, he poured water into a basin and began to wash the disciples' feet, drying them with a towel that was wrapped around them. He said to Simon Peter, he came to Simon Peter, who said to him, Lord, are you going to wash my feet? And Jesus replied, you do not realize what I'm doing, but later you will understand. And Peter said, no. You ain't going to wash my feet. And Jesus answered, unless I wash you, you don't have any part with me. And then the Lord said, Simon Peter replied, not just my feet, but my hands and my head as well. And Jesus answered, those who have had a bath need only to wash their feet. Their whole body is clean, and you are clean. Though not every one of you, he saw not Judas there. He said, for he knew who was going to betray him. And that was why he said, not everyone was clean. And when he had finished washing their feet, he put on his clothes, and he returned to this place. And he said, do you understand what I've done for you? He says, you call me teacher, and you call me Lord, and rightly so, for that's what I am. Now that I, your Lord and teacher, have washed your feet, you should also wash one another's feet. In other words, I've been a servant, so you should be a servant. So why am I trying to be a king when that's not what Jesus came? He came as a servant. And I've set an example that you should do as I've done for you. Very truly I tell you, no servant is greater than his master, nor is a messenger greater than the one who sent him. And now that you know these things, will you be blessed if you do them? You will be blessed if you do them. See, Jesus preaches about having authority, but he still chooses to serve. And it's something about somebody who could lord over you, but doesn't. They choose to get under and serve you. He's still choosing to serve. He leads by example, knowing it makes more an impact, what? To give than to receive. And we tell our children that at Christmas every year, it's better to give than to receive. It's better to give than receive. How about living a lifestyle, January through December, that your kids look at and they say, you know what? It is better than to give than to receive because my parents do that. How about going out and doing some things that show that, instead of just saying, here's your gift, but it's better to give than to receive. Jesus sets the example of serving by becoming lower than those that served him, in order to influence them and impact their future. You say, how can I can't reach this person for Christ. I can't tell them about, have you served them? Do you really love them? Because if you really love them, you get down in the dirt with them. And you get in their mess. And you get in their mixed up situation and you become part of what's going on. See, that's the reality of life, is if I want to influence somebody, I'll get under there and I'll help it when it's in need. I remember one time somebody's plumbing was broken, and so what we did was we went over and we helped them in the plumbing, and we're crawling through mud. And it's not because we have to, it's because we want to, because that's how we can show love at that time. And I'm saying sometimes you do some things that you wouldn't normally do so that you have influence and impact that you wouldn't have any other time. So what means more? It means more that I go out and I help someone. Do I do it just so they'll come to church? No. I do it so that I have influence. Because if I'm there in your mess, you know what I get to be? I get to be there in your miracle. I get a place at the table. Jesus is supposed to be served. He's at this last supper that he's going to have with his disciples. He knows it's the end. And you would think everyone would just love on him and give him all this attention, but if they don't, he gets down and he serves them. Jesus lived his whole life as a servant. He was king, and he understood that in order to bring people up, you have to go beneath them and push them, never above them and pull them to where you are. And what I love about Jesus is he never placed value on position. He always placed it on people. It doesn't matter. You're President of the United States, no, you're Cajun. I love you. It doesn't matter. This person over here, if we start ranking people and valuing people because of their position, we'll miss people. And we'll start living for positions. Many people are only motivated to reach out when they can receive from someone in return. And the question that I ask you today is, how do you respond to someone who has nothing to offer you? How do you respond to them? They're literally going to give you nothing in return. They're probably going to take more than they're going to give you. Are you still friendly? Are you still as giving as you would be? And are you still motivated to share Jesus with those people? Because that's the truth. You're going to meet a lot more people who will take from you than will give to you. And what are you going to give those people? They'll have nothing to give you in return. The guy on the side of the road, the guy in the store, the guy at the gas station, the lady that you meet, next door neighbor, they probably don't have nothing to give to you. So they have nothing to give you. So why are you investing in them? I'm investing in them so that I will have impact and influence. I want to reach people so I don't beat them over the head with my Bible. I might actually take out their trash. I played in a band with a guy, Colton Brown, some of you may know him, and we played in the band together, and you'd be like, where's Colton? Why ain't he? He's over there taking out the trash. That's not what we've been brought here to do. But that's who he was. And I'll be honest, he was a good bass player, but even he wouldn't have been, I wanted people like that around me. Because you're always like the 5 people closest to you. It's the rule of 5. Surround yourself with people who are great and will be great. You surround yourself with people who don't do the things that you agree with, you'll start being like them. They will start being like you. 5 are stronger than 1. John the Baptist was a great example of a servant. He's known as what? The preparer. He was sent to prepare the way for Jesus. And he came, what I love about John is he came not to draw light to himself, but to shine light on the coming Messiah. That was his job. It wasn't so that he had this great light and everybody look at me, look what I can do. He had a good ministry, but his ministry was to shine the light back on Jesus. He wasn't seeking to make himself great, so he made himself what? Lowly. So it would be evident that it was not about him bringing fame to himself. It was actually about him bringing others to Christ. And when the time came in John's ministry that Jesus is introduced, John the Baptist does not shy away from Jesus. He actually embraces him. And he says something to the effect of, I must become less so he may become more. Let me show you this scripture here. John chapter 3, verse 27 says, to this John replied, a person can receive only what is given him from heaven. You yourselves can testify that I said I am not the Messiah, but am sent ahead of him. He's what? He's the preparer. It says the bride belongs to the bridegroom. The friend who attends the bridegroom waits and listens for him and is full of joy when he hears the bridegroom's voice. That joy is mine, and it's now complete. He must become greater, and I must become less. John had a stage. He had people coming out in the wilderness to find him. He was baptizing people left and right. He actually baptized Jesus. And he goes, what? He says, you know what? He says, I'm not the one everybody should look at. I'm here to shine light on what everybody should look at. I'm going to become less so that he can become more. I'm going to become less so that he might actually be and fulfill the prophecies that have been told about him. I am not the show. I am here to point to the show. And if more people would work like that, I'm telling you, I'd have a different experience in life. But the problem that I see is that most people love the stage and they're nowhere to be the servant. You guys who coach, people who have coached, you know there's that one guy every now and then that you get that stays after practice and helps you clean up. And sometimes he may be your best player. And I found that the ones who are talented and have that quality, those are your best players. But sometimes even the ones that aren't the most talented, they're the ones that stay around. They're the ones that in the clinch of the game, they're the ones that give you the win. It's because they always put others before themselves. John the Baptist exhibited servanthood as good as anyone. He was considered great on earth by Jesus. Jesus said there's nobody else on earth like him, but yet he's the least in heaven. He came to prepare the way for Jesus, and he served in waiting, and he died a martyr. And when Jesus came forth, John willingly faded away, and he became less so Jesus might be more. And in doing so, he was a nice guy who finished last, and he split heaven wide open. Let my life be lived so that I can shine a light on Jesus. I'm not here to take up his light. I'm here to give him a light. I'm here to come off the stage so that he can come on the stage. I'm here to get off the throne so that he can be on the throne. I have to become less so that he can become more. I'm a nice guy who pushes others to the front so that they'll finish first and I will finish last, because I know that one day there's going to come a day in heaven where the last are going to be first and the first are going to be last. So I'm aiming real hard to be last here. John the Baptist, I love it. He ate locust and wild honey. He wore camel clothing, or clothing made of camel's hair, and he lived in deserts. And his ministry was not in palaces with servants as his command. Yet people sought him out because of how he lived. And he never showed up to crowded places to make a name for himself. He didn't show up in the middle of the temple and go, hey, everybody follow me out to the desert and I'll baptize you. People came out there to where he was because of how he lived. He was known because of the authority by which he came, and his ministry flourished in desert places. And the more he became less, the greater Jesus became in his ministry. And Jesus was magnified through the ministry of John. And John simply prepared for the arrival of Jesus to come on the scene. It's funny, the more he became less, the greater his ministry grew. The more he pointed to Jesus, the more people wanted what he had. And when it was time for him to fade away, he did. There was another person that was a lot like this. Paul knew what it meant to serve others. So he became less, so his influence became more. The Apostle Paul said it this way. If you look at 1 Corinthians chapter 9, and it starts at verse 19, it says, for though I am free from all, I have made a servant. I have made myself a servant to all, that I might win more of them. In other words, he said, my position as a leader wasn't near as impactful as my position as a servant. To the Jews, I became as a Jew. Why? So I could win the Jews. To those under the law, I became as one under the law. That not being myself under the law, that I might win those under the law. He said, to those outside the law, I became as one outside the law. Not being outside the law of God, but under the law of Christ, that I might win those outside the law. To the weak, I became weak, that I might win the weak. And I've become all things to all people, that by all means I might save some. And I do it all for the sake of the gospel, that I may share with them in its blessing. Do it for my own sake. Do it for your sake. Do it for the sake of the gospel. I become like you so that I can influence you and so that I can impact you. If you're in the dirt, I'm in the dirt. Is it painful? Yes. But we do it why? So that we have impact and influence. Because if you're in the dirt and I don't come around, I have no influence with you. Paul understood that serving others opened the door of influence in their life. And what I love about this is, would he save them all by doing this? No. What did he say? I become all things to all men so that I might save them all? No. He said, so I might save some. You don't win everybody that you go after. Everybody doesn't pray and receive Christ. The hope is that they would come to know Jesus because of it. That's what we always hope. And we do what is right for other people, knowing sometimes it will not give us influence in their lives. And we don't get discouraged when we don't see them change. We can't and won't save them all. And what others do to you shouldn't dictate how you treat them. Let me say it again for those in the back. How I treat others is not determined by how they treat me. That's entry-level Christianity, people. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you, not as they actually do to you. I've heard that scripture termed and twisted as you would want them to do to you. I want them to be good to me, so I'm good to them, even when they're bad. What you do, Brett, it will never determine how I treat you. It's because I made up my mind long before we become friends, long before I ever met you, how I was going to treat you. And I base it off the Word of God. You know what? Everybody we come in contact with, that's the way it ought to be. And if you want to have influence and impact in people's life, you're going to have to start treating people good, no matter how they treat you. Because you know what? You're not determined by them. You're determined by your Father in heaven. And how would He treat them? He would treat them enough to go and stretch out His arms and die for them. Everybody that you come in contact with. You don't save them all. You can't save them all. And you can't determine how you treat them based off how they treat you. So we choose to treat others. And our mind, we choose to treat them good, and our mind should be made up long before we engage them. Jesus told his disciples this. He said, everyone you go to is not going to accept you. Look at this verse right here. If anyone will not welcome you or listen to your words, leave that home or town and shake the dust off your feet. I like it. You know what? If you don't want it, that's fine. Okay, I'm on. These were the words of Jesus, and echoed again by the great theologian Taylor Swift, who said what? Shake it off. When I'm helping others or leading ministries, one of the things I tell the people is what? We take on the burden. We take on the burden. We become less so they can become more. I'm a big boy. I can take it. Why do we take on the burden? Because when those we're trying to reach feel the burden has been taken off, has been put on them, what happens is we lose our chance to influence them. Chik-fil-a tries this as much as they can to provide for their customers. And if there is a burden the customer may have, they attempt to solve it for them before they ever have. Have you ever noticed Chik-fil-A's pretty good service? Not the same as when you go to Taco Bell. You get that? Hey, what you want? Kind of thing. It's not the same experience for me. Not the same level of cleanliness. For some reason, I still go there. For example, every response to your thank you is always answered at Chick-fil-A with what? With a program response of, my pleasure. It's my pleasure. I take on the burden because that's what I do. We should treat all people with the same response. You know what? It's our pleasure to show you the way. I love you enough to care. I love you enough to get mixed up in your emotions. I love you enough to lay down and die with you. Why? Because that's what Jesus did. And that's what he did. We should treat all people with the same response. It's our pleasure to show them the way. We do not accept sin. I'm not saying that just because you go out and you do drugs, I'm going to go out and do drugs with you. No, that's not what I'm getting at. We should treat all people with the same response. So we offer people what's been freely offered to us. And what's been freely offered to us is a solution to sin in Jesus Christ. It's not that I know every answer that you ask me about, but I can introduce you to him. He's the only answer for sin. And we become all things to all people, not so we can win them all, that we might just win some. Paul became a servant when he had previously been served. It says when Stephen was stoned, he's one of the first deacons of the church. When Stephen was stoned, they laid their coats at the feet of a young man named Saul. We know he would later have an encounter with Jesus and would eventually be called Paul. He had been served, but yet when he transformed to be more like Christ, he became what? A servant. So someone might see Jesus in him, the one great servant who died for the sins of all men. And just like John the Baptist had said, the theme still echoes true to this. It says, I must become less, or he must become greater, and I must become less. And what I've realized is pride will keep you from influence. Prideful people don't have much influence in our life. They want to hoard things over you. They want to talk to you. They want to talk down to you. They want to tell you how much they know. And you never know how much they care. You cannot serve the ones that you hold yourselves above. So if you're serving in a position currently and everybody's below you, you need to change the way that you're leading. Because you're never going to have influence. If you're not willing to be involved in someone's mess, you'll never celebrate their miracle. And it's been said this, that no one knows how much you care until they know how much, or no one cares how much you know until they know how much you care. And that's true. People are entertained by what we do for a moment. But it's the way that we make them feel. That's what they're remembered for. My grandmother died in 2005, and I remember this. It's been 15 years later, and I still remember how she made me feel. And when you influence people, they're going to remember how you made them feel. The truth was quoted by Maya Angelou when she said this. She said, people will forget what you said, people will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel. And you look at that and you say, oh, that's good. But the reality is that's good and bad. Because if you make people feel bad, they remember it. And praise the Lord, if you make people feel good, they remember it too. So if you want to influence people, you have to care for people. Too many want to save souls, but don't even know names. Oh man, I had this many people come to the Lord. It doesn't matter if you don't know their names. You don't know their story. We want people to say a prayer, but we don't want to share in their pain. I remember praying this. I was praying, I said, oh Lord, help us build a building here. We were growing like, it's a bit full like this today. And we're praying, and I said, Lord, just help us to build this new building. Help us to this new thing. And I remember just hearing it so plainly. It was like, do you want to build people or do you want to build buildings? And I remember I was so selfishly, I was kind of like both. Let's just be real. But what I'm realizing is this, is that God is more concerned with people than buildings. And so that makes our April the 11th barbecue and egg hunt even more important because we get a chance to build people. And let me tell you, people are built block by block. And just like I couldn't build a new church building today, you can't build people in a day. It's a process. I'm real task-oriented. And a friend of mine told me one time, he said, you need to learn how to walk slow through the crowd. And you know what I've learned from that conversation is that I will literally go from one task to the next. And if I'm not careful, I'll walk past people to accomplish tasks. And when I do that, what I do is I lose. I lose a chance to influence someone. And I can lose someone's respect. And I can make tasks more important than people. And if somebody has something to tell me, even though it may seem silly at the time, there's a reason why they came to me to tell me. They either love me and they wanted to share it with me, or they've got a concern or a heartache they want to share with me and they want me to pray for. And you know what? We'll lose any time that we choose task over people. I've shared this with you before, but the preacher at Bethel Church, Bill Johnson, he's very respected out there, very respected through the nation for the things that he's done. They asked him one time, they said, how do you not talk about people? How have you disciplined yourself not to talk about others and not to say bad things about people? And he says, how can I talk about someone and put someone down who Christ was willing to die for? And you know what? That quote right there puts a lot of things in perspective, that everybody is valuable and everybody's important. Just because they're not like us doesn't mean they're not like our Father. We have to look at others with the value they have, because even the most difficult person, Christ was willing to lay down his life for. And I know this, and I'm really close to finishing, is nice guys finish last. That quote is always viewed as a bad thing, but the truth is this: nice guys and girls, like Christ, choose to finish last, so someone else might get the chance to finish first. Do it for your kids. Why wouldn't you do it for others? We're not laying up our treasures on earth, but we're actually storing them up in heaven. And we want to be like Christ, so we sacrifice this life so others might have it. And so someone who is destined to die might actually live. And we finish last because we push others ahead of us to the finish line. And Jesus said it this way. He said, do not store up for yourself treasures on earth where moth and rust destroy and where thieves break in and steal. But store up for yourself treasures in heaven where moth and rust do not destroy and where thieves do not break in and steal. For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. When you leave this earth, you don't get to carry anything with you. Somebody said one time, they said, I've never seen a U-Haul behind the hearse. You don't get to carry it with you. My hope is this. In heaven, they're going to give me crowns for the things I've done here. You know what? And I'm going to get a chance to stand before Jesus. And it talks about in Revelation chapter 4 where the elders lay their crowns down before the Lord. I'd like to have something to give them. They don't give me nothing there. And I sure can't take anything from here. There's going to come a day where I'm only going to be laid down what I've been given. And I'd like to lay down a lot. I'd like to give him something back. For all he's done for us. It's immeasurable. So if I have to finish last so that he can be greater, okay. Because it's not going to matter in 1,000 years. Revelation speaks of that day. And I want something to give them when it's all said and done. So my aim is to finish last here so that I might have a chance to finish first there. That's what we get to do when we finish first. I finish last here and we finish first there. Is we get to take what we've been given, we get to give it back to them. Let's stand together. I ask the worship team to come this morning. What we're talking about today is, you know what? Nice guys finish last. They get below people and they raise them up. And it's a lot easier to press somebody up than to pull somebody up. And so what I would say is if you want to influence people, if you want to make a difference, if you really want to have some crowns at the end, get down in the mud. Get down in the mud of life with somebody and lift them up. And you know what? It's going to be hurtful for you. They're going to say things to you that are going to hurt your feelings. You're going to lay at home at night, and there's going to be some nights you can't go to sleep because of it. But you know what? One day, it's going to matter. It's going to make a difference. And so what I would say this morning is this altar is open for people, number one, to give your life to Christ if you've